some people on my channel and Discord have been asking me to maybe do some videos and talk about Starbreaker and other things that Starnival Studios does. So thought I'd start off with the setting that I got me into the gaming business and made me want to run, create, whatever. And Starbreaker was inspired long ago, 20 plus years ago or so, uh, when I was playing a sci-fi setting called Alternity. So I thought I'd create my own universe. I did, wrote a lot of notes, and then I was like, oh, maybe I should turn this into something that could sell someday about 6 years ago. And so here we are. There's probably a lot more I could talk about that part, but that's not the point of the video today, really. So like, what is, if you don't know, what is Starbreaker, Saints and Sinners? And it's broad terms, it's a sci fantasy space opera in a gritty galaxy using the Savage World system. But the setting takes place about 30 years and more, I guess more narrowly defined, a little detail. It takes place about 30 years after an event called the Armageddon War, which is a galaxy-spanning event that destroyed worlds, kind of almost ended civilization as people know it, and basically left the galaxy in a pretty rough state. Criminal organizations rose up and took over portions of the human-controlled space. The government's still there, but they're the puppets of the criminal organization. And then the corporate worlds broke off. They had to defend themselves, and they treat their citizens as employees at best and expendable assets at worst. So really great standard of living and such if you can make it, but of course the trade-offs are very little freedom. They use things like psi operatives to read your mind, control things. Not a great place. And of course there's the broader galaxy, the aliens that are there. And other people say, well, why is it called Saints and Sinners? I mean, short version, Saint stands for Sector Agent Intragalactic Task Force, a sort of undercover agency to take down the Syndicate. And then Sinner is slang for anyone who works for the Syndicate or at least embraces the criminal lifestyle. Every saint is a sinner, but not every sinner is a saint, because the saint pulls from criminals, and they kind of do today they'd say Suicide Squad. When I started writing, it was more kind of like inspired by things like the Dirty Dozen, if you're old enough to remember that. But it's that whole, make the criminals take down the bad guys kind of thing. There's not a bomb in their head, but there's a device that kind of encourages them strongly to behave. And so, that's kind of the basic idea. But people say, like, well, do I have to play a saint? I mean, I don't want to play the quote unquote undercover guy. I just want to be that free roaming criminal, smuggler, criminal with a heart of gold, or, straight up hardened criminals, bad guys. You want to play that? You can play it any way you want. It's a sandbox setting, and there's so much in it that if you just tried to run it like, well, what do we do? How do we play things? And so we focused on, those two options in the book, but the book doesn't say you have to play these. I mean, if you play a smuggler and you want to take jobs for anyone, or you just want to play it as a merchant, you could do that. I mean, the game's probably got a lot of details for how you're going to make money on your various runs and stuff, but you could do your standard space adventures, whatever way you want. So that's pretty open. But to give a focus for people to start with, we did the Saint Sinner option, kind of focused on that in the book, so you'd know where to go. And then you're like, what are some of the character options? Like, what can I be? I mean, obviously, it's sci fantasy. Are there aliens? What are the things I can be as far as my class or profession, as you would call it? And I mean, it's Savage World, so there's not really a class, but we have professions. We have some set like edges or abilities you get as your focus, but you still have that open ability to pick and build what you want. So there's 13 species in the core book when you include humans. The other book we did, Star Marines, adds another species. So that's really a total of 14 options if you get the second book, I guess. And just to kind of explain why they're all so similar in that how do they breathe oxygen? Like these two guys behind me right here. That's the Hopok, the big rhino species up there. And then the Nakura, the bat-like species. Yeah, they have wings. If you see that second R that goes into a wing. They breathe oxygen. Same places. They look very, Earth-based. That's because, short version, they were all created by the progenitors and seeded into the galaxy. That's another video, explain everything about that. That would be too much here. But so you can play like the Vukolosai. Some people say, aren't they pronounced the Vukolasi? No, I say Vukolosai. There's some Bosnian inspiration, the language in there when I had a friend who helped design the art early on. And they're pretty much, pretty typical wolf-like species with the pack mentality for their society. I mean, because, yeah, it's a bit of a trope, but it's one that I like, and I made the game that I want to play. Obviously, there's other options, but that is exactly what it sounds like. I mean, it's fun and it's easy for people to get a grasp on, and some people like that. So cool. They're not necessarily warlike. They're just, they work together, and that's quite it influences the way their government works, the way their families work, etc. So there's that in there. There's the Nakira, the bat people you see there in my background. They're actually orbit the moon. They're on the moon that orbits the Vukolosai planet, and early on they came into a conflict and such, but they quickly worked it out, and they've been allies forever in the Vukolosai Union. That's part of the game. There's the Dunar, which the Dunar are a bit different in that a lot of the other species, like they find each other, realize they existed over time as they had been seeded in the galaxy and so forth. But the Dunar were actually created by one of the progenitor species, as they're basically warrior, combat troops, expendable, cloned in thousands upon tens of thousands of them. And so they're the face of the Armageddon War. And it's only been 30 years since that war. So they're the first generation now has grown up, not part of being, forced to be the bad guys and fight. So you have these, people who remember them being those who attacked them. So there's a little bit of distrust there. But also their society is very based around the military, because that's all they've known until just the last 30 years. They're learning what it's like to exist without being about, combat and being directed to fight. So those are some of the species options. There's, like I said, a lot more, but I'll cover every single one here. Maybe we'll do videos on individual ones in more detail later. There are 10 professions. Savage Worlds typically has a very, pick and choose your abilities and skills and build your own thing. But I enjoy having a little bit of a focus. Like if I'm the engineer, I should be objectively better at engineering than the guy who just picked up the skill on his character sheet. Because it's cool to be well-rounded, but I want to make them each profession slightly better at its job than just a random person or random character in the group. So you pick these professions, you get a small package of edges and some skills to start that put you on the path to be good at that, and you get a couple other edges you can pick up that only that profession can get, making you slightly better at that than other people. So everyone can kind of take on a role in the group, kind of helps define things. Speaking of that, we actually have even an edge for your groups, like when you're a syndicate group, like what kind of group are you? We can do that in another video, but again, that kind of helps you figure out how you're going to play the game, right? Some of those professions are like the Psychommando. They have enhanced physical and combat capabilities. They're the super soldier. They can walk up walls. They can get stronger, but it's all focused inward on themselves. They're not, except with the exception of like one or two abilities, they don't really affect others. They have a thing they wear on their wrist, which allows them to focus some psychic energy into a blast or a bolt and make an attack. But most of their abilities don't outwardly attack anything. Then there's the psyops. I wanted to separate the things. I don't want you to have mind control and all the body control in one package. So, the psyops, they can read your mind, sense your emotions. They can puppet you if they get strong enough. They're kind of scary. And like I said, they're favored by the corporate worlds to help control their populace. They're used by everyone. Nobody's dumb enough to pass up that. No government's going to say, oh, we won't use that. But some are worse about it with very few restrictions. Then there's the hypertech. When you see the sci-fi, when you have like the virtual world you can go into, hypertechs do that. They can control drones, robots directly, with their links. They have the virtual screens they can see in their minds, and they can actually enter into the hypernet and actually bring the rest of the group along. Again, probably a separate video, but so no one's left out why the hypertech does their thing. and explore that virtual world and complete a mission there as well. They're the ones that do that kind of thing. So that's kind of a broad overview of some of the things about Starbreaker. I'm sure we can talk about a lot more as we go. Like, what are you interested in? So like, are you interested in picking up Starbreaker? Or I'm going to include the links down there, and a link for DTRPG where it's at. If you want to follow us on Facebook, I'll throw that link in there, as well as our Discord if you want to join in and ask questions. Let me know what the next video should be about. Maybe we'll put that down there. Like, are you interested in the different factions like the Star Systems Alliance, the Corporate Worlds, the Syndicate, specific species, more professions? What interests you the most? Let us know that. Or I say us, me. And I can go over some more of that in the next one. And cool. Thanks for watching the video, and let me know what you think so I can do more.